the Hard Knock Life. I'm Keith Chow. I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Sean Taylor, Dominic Ma, and a brand new co-host to the Hard Knock Life podcast. Please welcome. You've seen him on YouTube. He's been holding it down for us, Jamal Michelle. What's up, fellas?
What's going on, y'all?
What's up, everybody?
Hey, Keith, how's it going?
Welcome back. It's been a long time. We shouldn't have left you without a dope pod to listen to. But here we are. It's been a half a year. It's been quite a half a year. So much has happened since June of 2020. Shit, so much has happened in the last 3 weeks. We've decided it's time to podcast again. So welcome back, fellas.
Welcome. I'm glad we're able to do this. There's a lot to talk about.
It's great to see all of you. We're actually doing the Zoom with the looking at people thing here, and it's a nice feeling.
We made it to 21. So we have a new
Yeah.
administration. Like, there's no longer the doom scrolling on Twitter.
Well, sort of. It's like different. It's evolved.
It's evolved.
It's changed.
I'm catching up on all the Doom bookmarking that we got. There was like prime Doom scrolling and then save some shit to read for later. That was equally terrible. And
It's
now
a whole
you
new
can
day.
catch up on that.
I'm happy. I mean, I'm a glass is half full kind of person. Or should I say, I'm a glass is 66% full. Because apparently the media is all about highlighting the 33% of America who still thinks, that John Delancey is running everything. That's a Star Trek reference. Here's the thing. Before we get into what we're going to talk about today, I just love the fact that the right whole conspiracy theory is about this omnipotent force named Q. And, did any of them watch The Next Generation? Do they know, there is an omnipotent force named Q and he's not really pulling the strings, he's just fucking with Picard? That's his whole thing.
Oh, my Lord.
Well, yeah, and also they take a liberal interpretation of the Matrix. I shouldn't say liberal interpretation, just an interpretation of the Matrix and some other pop cultural texts, and that's something that's very interesting about all that stuff. But I think it was we all read the thing about how Q is sort of based on was the narrative was created by some screenwriter type of LA, and you can totally see that, the end of the world, with this weird, completely unlikely hero.
Is this screenwriter named Rick Berman by any chance?
Cast this. Well, that would make a lot of that makes sense. But I mean, Sean, I know you like to talk about narratives and the right versus left, and they do have a narrative.
And it seems to work better than the leftist narrative, because for some odd reason that really crazy, I guess it's also too Gnostic Christianity's fault. When you can eliminate the middle person, like priests and clergy, and you are a secret religious warrior fighting a secret religious war, that mythology is very appealing, as opposed to, hey, we got to do some work over here. Right? And so, so these people are so into their personal mythology, and so they're looking at, corrupted versions of Gnosticism, corrupted versions of every possible thing you can think of that's a public cultural common, and just twist it so they can all be the heroes in their own little warped Campbellian narrative, and it's really disgusting, actually.
Yeah, they really want to be dudes out of a comic book because of like Punisher and Captain America, even though they know that, those two could not be further from the insurrectionists. So I don't even know that they know Cap and the Punisher deeply enough.
They wind up being vanilla ISIS.
But they want to be them.
Point well taken. But what about those guys who are gonna kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, who call themselves the Wolverine Watchmen or whatever? I'm just saying there's some nerd culture has something to answer there for there, or we need to have a broader understanding of it.
Throughout the campaign, the Trump campaign was unironically positioning themselves as the Death Star. Right, Steve Bannon, not Steve Bannon.
Well, Stephen Miller.
What's his name? The guy who gives a shit who these people are anymore. But his Brad Pascal, his campaign manager, tweeted out this image of we're the Death Star, we're preparing the Death Star or whatever. And it's dude, did you even watch? They blew that shit up 3 times.
No, they don't. They didn't watch it. They just know that their base likes Star Wars, and then even then, it's so strange because their base would be anti-politics in sports or in video games, or even though it's everywhere. I don't get you.
Yeah. Well, as Dominic, it's the appropriating pop culture is not the sole domain of the right, because as you've documented on the Nerds of Color, we have our own champion in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's quite the NOC herself up there on Capitol Hill.
Oh yeah, she did something great the other day that was Star Trek related, but it's escaping my mind right at the moment. Did you have a specific thing in mind?
No, but for me, it's like, I think she does it differently. Well, she actually takes pop culture and applies it to situations, whereas the other side decides to populate pop culture through their warped lens. And there's a difference. They insert themselves in the narrative while she looks at the narrative and shows parallels to what's happening now. I think that's a different function of pop culture and her facility and her expertise in it. And I think that's what's different to me about him.
And it's really fascinating, I find, for the last 4 years, we literally had a pop culture president. Like, Donald Trump ascended to the presidency solely because he was a TV guy. Like,
think about all the rappers that used to name check Donald Trump.
Lil Wayne, like, in his
and Kodak, and the other guy, Kodak Black, was it?
Yeah, Kodak, and
they were wacky anyway. And then all the Marvel comics that used to have Trump Tower in them, like old She-Hulk, panels and all these things where, because, in New York, this guy has this, I mean, as a New Yorker, we knew he was trash. Y'all didn't believe us. Y'all wanted to give him a chance. I mean, already knew.
The great irony, though, of having a literal pop culture president is that pop culture itself largely shunned him. Like, it was really evident when you watched the inauguration this year versus the inauguration 4 years ago, when like the most famous singer they could get was Lee fucking to do and I'm proud to be an American. And like this year it was like J-Lo and Lady Gaga, and Tom Hanks had this whole like because that's all Trump really wanted, right? He wanted the
adulation
and adulation of celebrities.
They were talking about that on Twitter, like that. There was a conversation about how like you can tell who like celebrities and artists really align themselves with, because all of those events, from the DNC to the RNC to the inauguration, you can tell the kind of talent that is willing to pull for you. And if it was a set list, if all of Trump shit was a set list, probably crap.
Well, the guy, like, his walk-off music is YMCA still. Like, it's like, what? Who are you? But the thing is that he's always craved the adulation of the media elite, right? Mm-hmm. That's what he's chased after. And the irony is that the people who follow him the most fervently are the type of people he could give two shits about. Like, he doesn't like those people. Mm-hmm. The people who stormed the Capitol risked their lives for his cause, not for any greater cause than propping up one man. Like, he could give two shits about it, and but I guess that's any cult of personalities like that. They don't really care about the people who follow.
No, I mean, why would you?
So that's it for Knock Save America. Let's talk about what people really care about, what they really tuned into this podcast. It's not our musings on Donald Trump presidency. It's about the shit we watched since June of 2020. And there's been a lot of shit that we didn't get a chance to talk about since we took a long hiatus. We never talked about The Mandalorian on this show. We didn't talk about Wonder Woman 1984 for good or ill. We didn't talk about the fact that no Marvel anything came out in the entire 2020, unless you count Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I guess.
I like to think we were taking a respectful pause for all the amount of shit that was going on. Not that, stories paused and, people's enjoyment of things paused, but, whether it was the pandemic or, super racist president, trying to overturn democracy, kill the voting process, that was just, too much at a certain point. And on a personal level, it was too much to continue ranting about pop culture all the time at the same fervor for me. And then it was things like, Chadwick Boseman passed away, and you're just like, well, fuck, that's an incredibly harsh, real-life thing to destroy this one iconic piece of pop culture that I loved. It was overwhelming, is what I'm trying to articulate.
I'm actually really glad you brought that up, Dominic, because Jamal, you wrote, one of the pieces you wrote for us at the Nerds of Color was this beautiful eulogy for Chadwick. Can you just talk about how you felt when you woke up and saw the news that Chadwick Boseman, of all people, not only passed away, but had been hiding his cancer diagnosis for the last 4 or 5 years, filming Black Panther and all of those Avengers movies while also going through chemo? You mentioned Twitter, all the jokes on Twitter about his appearance, not knowing that he was actually dying. And on top of all the Marvel stuff, doing probably 2 of his best performances, which he'll probably get posthumously awarded for in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and The Five Bloods. So, just that's the frame. Could you just talk about what compelled you to write that?
It was it's... Y'all know the vibes. If something hits you super hard, you have to write about it or tweet about it. Something super quick, you can make an Instagram post, but something to that effect that really took everyone by surprise except his inner circle. I was so in shock, I needed to just put down real quick how important this person was, not just to me, but to like the kids I taught, right? So like the field trips that we would have when we would go either see his work or anything related to what Black Panther did impacted like me, my personality, my classroom, just my inner adolescent as well. And just I'm so stunned that he got all that work done as sick as he was. So he really embodied his character in real life. And you don't see that often. So for someone like that to come and go in the year that he did, and under the conditions that he did, leaving behind the legacy that he did, I had to put something down.
And as young as he was, because I think that's he did leave this legacy behind. And the dude was like 43, 44 years old. Like
very young.
Such a prolific career at such a young age. And crassly, like a lot of the conversation after his death was what happens to Marvel, what happens to the Black Panther franchise, and it's been enough time that maybe that's something one can actually ponder, but it does make you think like Black Panther was such a cultural phenomenon. Sean, you've talked about how important that film was just as a cultural phenomenon more than just a film, and a lot of the conversation that I saw after his passing was there was the conversation about like should we recast, should there even be a Black Panther 2? And then the other side of that conversation is, is it fair to tie that singular character up in one actor? Like, can't there be a Black Panther without Chadwick Boseman? Some of the arguments I've seen is that like there have been 7 Batman since 1966. Why can't there be another Black Panther? And, because he's such an important and iconic character. Where do you fall in that, Sean? Because I know how much you've written about Black Panther, but do you feel like the character is bigger than the actor?
I mean, it's interesting because for me, Black Panther was never the thing, right? It was Wakanda was the thing for me because it gave Black kids things they never had before. They gave them a homeland, a language, a cosmology, things that they've never had, right? That were stolen from by enslavement. And so for me, it's hard to think about the recasting because, first of all, just that Black people are always working themselves to death. Like we're always hiding pain to work for other people. Like it's still really bothersome to me to even think about the idea. But we also saw how shitty the Russo brothers treated Wakanda and Black Panther in the last Avengers film. I mean, it was horrible. Like, really, you're gonna destroy you could have had that anywhere else, what you chose to do. I mean, there was just a lot of really crap decisions that they made for that film as far as related to Black Panther and Wakanda. But I mean, like, is it time to give Shuri a chance at the mantle? I think she's probably personally too young right now and not as worldly as Black Panther is, unless we go fast forward X amount of years and then she has had all that. Or Nakia even would be kind of dope. I mean, probably be a better choice than Shuri to be the new Black Panther. But it's just, for me, it's like, we've had 11 James Bonds. We've had a bunch of Spider-Men. And so from a purely financial standpoint, continuity, yeah, you could recast him. Will it be the same? Who knows? Right?
And that's kind of like, I feel like the gift and the curse of how they've kind of fashioned the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Like, save for a couple recastings here and there, Terrence Howard magically became Don Cheadle.
Iron Man.
No one... no shade to War Machine. No one really gives a shit about Rhodey.
Because he's a black character. Because he's a black character in non-Black Panther movies in Marvel, and Marvel treats their black characters like trash.
But even then, I mean, even then, he's not like a top tier character, like regardless, right? But again, part of the problem with like Marvel's strict adherence to continuity is this, like, I used to argue the reason that we give a shit about Civil War, not necessarily Dawn of Justice, is that we followed Chris Evans as Captain America and Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man for like, at that point, 6 or 7 years. That's why their conflict meant more than this guy who was a Superman once and a brand new Batman we'd never seen
Martha
before. And then that just happened to have the same mom. But like, if I used to argue, if you had maybe cast Christian Bale in Batman versus Superman, maybe it would have meant more, just because you're continuing the story of a guy we've seen be Batman for 10 years.
Or Brandon Routh as Superman, because I think I don't think that he got the love that he deserved for that. I mean, because Bryan Singer is a hack. Well, yeah. And and he never got the love that he deserved. Because I think that Brandon actually did a pretty good job when he was Superman.
Yeah, but it was a shit movie.
No, the movie was trash. I mean, and you know me, I'm a DC person. You know, I'm a DC guy.
You know what I'm saying?
But
like that adherence to continuity is that we do kind of tie these actors up into these characters. And so the argument that like you could just cast, someone else as Black Panther, I think, on the surface that makes sense if you think of this as a Batman, James Bond kind of thing. But because the MCU is the MCU, like either you got to give up the continuity and just make spin-off Black Panther as its own thing. But does that, that's what they did on Black Lightning on the CW, where it was like separate from everybody too. So like,
of course, segregation again with black characters, but
yeah, but that's what I mean though. Like if you decide, well, Black Panther's too important and we need someone to play T'Challa, damn the continuity error when a whole different dude shows up in Avengers 5. That's what I'm saying. Like how do you square that circle? Like the continuity piece, because again, Marvel's very like that's the thing that they did that separated them from the rest of movies. Right?
I mean, they pulled a Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They gave us so much interconnected, beautifully realized continuity that we had an investment. I mean, Chris Evans, his cat portrayal made us forget that he played Human Torch. You know what I'm saying? We forgot for the most part. Like, oh, that is Captain America. I mean, so they did that Buffy the Vampire Slayer thing where it was like, okay, there's an overarching story, but these little individual episodes still. I mean, it's a beautifully realized mission. I mean, 10 years plus years?
23 movies.
Yeah, 23 movies, and I just think that. But I mean, I don't think you can recast Chadwick Boseman in the physics of their world. Like you can't do that because it would not make any sense. So let Nakia have the shot, and then maybe 2 more movies. She's done, and sure will be seasoned enough to take the mantle.
Yeah, and can I just add, it's not weird because it's built into the character of Black Panther. That's a mantle that goes from person to person, and I think that's just again the world of the movie and the rules and the legacy set up by the movie are bigger than any one human.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, apart, of course, from the total real world cost of what that one human mental was. This is why, like, the whole world was like in this sort of split screen. I mean, there was like the world of imagination was on pause, and the real world was just going terribly wild. And also, just like to go back to one thing you said, like, I mean, if 2020 taught us anything, is that all big plans can take a big pause and get derailed really easily. So it's kind of fascinating that even, the Marvel big plan effectively took a big pause, as did so many things.
Oh, for sure. I mean, one of the things you and I had been talking about leading up to, 2020 and our hiatus was like how this was going to be the year of like the female superhero, right? Like all of the big superhero movies this year were going to be led by women, and it started off brilliantly with Birds of Prey. Like you and I think did 7 podcasts about Birds of Prey alone at the beginning of the year. And we were supposed to get a Black Widow movie. We were supposed to get a Mulan movie. We were supposed to get a Eternals movie and Wonder Woman, of course. Like, and all those movies were either delayed to this year or debuted on streaming to various, receptions.
And I sort of like to think they might have to be reconceptualized a little bit too. I mean, I don't know for sure. I mean, I think WandaVision already showed a sign of something that was baking before the pandemic, and they just finished it. I don't know. I just feel a lot of terms of making movies have changed. Just a literal process of like shooting something is all different now with the pandemic protocols.
Did we miss Marvel this year? Like, as upsetting as it is to like have all these movies pushed a year, like honestly. Maybe because so much shit was going on in the world.
No, there's too much shit. There was way too much shit going on. And just aside from that, there's like accessible shit that you could access at home because of how accessible it needed to become because of the pandemic, right? So we're not like concerned about going to the movies because that shit is closed down. And the movies we want to see, the TV shows we want to see are now becoming available on stream. I wanted to ask you guys real quick, what would it have been like if we got Endgame on stream?
I think, ironically, it's having its broadcast premiere today.
Oh, really?
I believe it's on TNT or something like that.
I knew it. Something told me.
Right. No, and I think that sort of speaks to like Marvel got away with the miracle of timing for one thing. They got out their ultimate escapist movie the year before basically everyone had to escape their own lives. Everyone was hijacked out of their own lives to one degree or another, and it was a shared experience. And so they got to have.
Well, speaking of shared experience, I mean, like that was, I think over the summer when there was like this nostalgia for like being in a movie theater and watching a film. The one movie everyone was talking about was Endgame, right? Like everyone was sharing the videos of the moment Cap gets Mjolnir, right? And like people cheering. Like that was such a communal experience. And I feel like, you know, for all of the faults of Wonder Woman 84, I think it did suffer from the fact that, you know, the reason it got trashed so much, other than the fact there was some things that were, you know, less honorable
Racist?
about that film.
Anti-Arab. But
also part of the reaction, I think, was because if you were watching that movie in a crowd, it may have maybe played better than just watching it on your TV. That said, I do think
may have.
Yeah, that's other than the racism, I kind of liked it, but we'll talk about it in a second. But I was going to say about, you know, I'm glad you brought up Endgame, because part of the other reason that I didn't feel like I missed Black Widow this year or even Eternals last year is that Endgame just felt like such a natural ending for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like Black Widow, we'd already talked about, was such a weird kind of kickstarted at Phase 4 anyway, because it's telling a story that takes place in between.
It's just stupid because Hawkeye should have been the one to die because he's a boring ass character.
Well, right.
Like,
there's that.
Why, let's just be honest.
And also, he always dies. It's part of his thing.
It's part of his thing. He's died 11 times in the books.
And after all the Jeremy Renner drama that came up after, they were probably hoping, they're like, damn, we should have killed your character, bro. We should have got rid of your guy.
That's the other thing. Like, why
shit.
kill off Black Widow if everyone knows the next movie in the sequence is Black Widow?
Also, Jamal, I mean, just to play out what I believe is the thought experiment of your question, I think it's sort of lucky that we didn't have an event that huge in 2020. I mean, I would, my closest analog would be the Olympics. They canceled the Olympics. The Olympics is a pretty big deal, and they rightfully decided to cancel it.
It may have to cancel it again.
They may have to cancel it again. In the thought experiment, if Avengers Endgame or Star Wars 10 was coming out this year, we would have been faced with a huge crisis of, you know, basically the producers and studios needing it to come out in a big way and needing everyone to like go spend maximum money on it, and probably would have exacerbated the health crisis even more than it was already exacerbated. So we're kind of lucky in a way that the blockbusters this year weren't that good.
Well, that's an interesting point too, because, and I'm going to ask this to Jamal because I know this was one of your highlights of 2020, but I feel like part of the reason Christopher Nolan is having this nasty divorce with Warner Brothers is because of, one, Tenet's kind of messed up release last year where it was being pushed, and he insisted on it being in theaters, and they were like, there's a pandemic, Chris. And then, the announcement that HBO Max was going to day and date every Warner Brothers release for 2021. I think those were the two straws that broke the camel's back of Christopher Nolan working with Warner Brothers. So the report I read most recently is he's likely going to sever his ties with Warner Brothers. And for anyone who's a Christopher Nolan fan, they know that like Warner Brothers is synonymous with Chris. Like he's their biggest director, right? And to lose Christopher Nolan's a big deal. But that said, I'm kind of on the corporate behemoth side here, because it's like,
yeah, for once, yes, for once, I'm right there with you.
Like, there's a reason.
And Tenet was whack.
Well, I haven't seen it.
No.
Jamal loves it. I haven't seen it, so no.
Listen, sorry, that is literally the most pretentious word salad of a movie that has ever existed.
This is the fun stuff.
That's Jamal. Worse than it's more pretentious than a Wes Anderson film. Like this
Nolan's other pretentious word salads.
Before you dive into spoilers, I just want to put out there, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh no spoilers. I promise. We're going to mention it.
I ordered the Blu-ray, and because the U.S. Postal Service was sabotaged by Donald Trump, it literally just came in the mail yesterday.
Wow.
So that's crazy.
I haven't seen it yet.
That's crazy.
Sean, I 1000% agree. Like it is super. It's peak Nolan. It's Nolan doing the gymnastics in front of us and giving himself 10s across the board and just yes, I get that. I don't know why I'm so hooked. I'm so hooked.
No, man. I mean, I was rooting. I love John David Washington. I think he's actually has a certain type of charisma we haven't seen in a while.
Yes,
on screen.
Absolutely.
He reminds me of what, like
Don't say
like
his dad.
Denzel.
You
no,
said his dad.
not at all. No, not at all. Not at all. He reminds me of. But I do say his dad, but his dad in like Virtuosity.
Yeah. Oh.
Like where there was this
Right.
level of confidence that was there that we haven't really seen from Denzel since. Now it seems to be more performative. Like I'm 140 years old, but I'm the equalizer. Like it doesn't really work anymore.
I feel like
But-
there's a big
but-
virtuosity story under there, but maybe that's for
Oh,
another.
I'm actually writing a whole chapter of my book about virtuosity right now.
Okay.
Actually,
Okay.
but there was something. But there's this energy that's there that like the Idris Elba. That there's a certain class of actor that has this almost effortless charisma that he has. But then you stick him in a movie with a guy who has never really done anything well with black people ever.
Right.
And you can't light his skin correctly, even though how he was lit was garbage. Like when you don't have that, it was kind of like, 'cause I don't trust Christopher Nolan with black people. Like I just don't. But there was something like you can't even light him correctly. You can't even hire people who worked with like Ava DuVernay or somebody to like even light the guy correctly. Like come
Right.
on, man. Like it was like offensive in sort of a way.
I was initially skeptical when my man Hans was not going to be on this. I was actually like, hold on, we're going to get a different composer. Like we're going to have somebody totally different making the sounds of this world. I do not feel safe right now. And this was, a long time ago when they first announced it. But I mean, my man's killed it on Black Panther.
Louis Göransson does the music for Tenet, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's
incredible.
It sounds, yes,
The
it
music
sounds so
is
gorgeous.
the sound
it
is
works.
wonderful. The music, the sound.
For what it's
design.
worth, Hans Zimmer's Wonder Woman score was trash. So maybe
know,
Hans wasn't
man,
feeling it in 2020.
Music has to
Maybe.
fit the film.
I was so disappointed. I was hoping it was like when you hear something and it sounds familiar and you're a part of you doesn't want it to be the thing you're thinking of because it sounds really bad. You're just like, hold on, this sounds familiar. I was thinking this when I was watching Wonder Woman and I'm like, wait, did Hans do this? No. And so I'm, it's that feeling of disappointment, but maybe Ludwig was just like, I'm going to borrow your instruments for a minute, your keyboard and your
aesthetic.
Well, Göransson's become like the I think he's supplanted Hans Zimmer as like the
I agree.
go-to iconic.
Yes, the guy for
score
now.
maker.
he's the new Silvestri,
Yeah,
Right?
I mean,
You know,
his
who-
Mandalorian score.
which was better than any Star Wars film.
The Mandalorian. I will say this as someone who loved The Last Jedi. The Mandalorian is the sequels we should have gotten. Like,
Oh,
that should.
and you know me, I'm not a Star Wars guy.
Yeah, you hate Star Wars.
And I was insomniac.com waiting until 12:01. Let's watch it. Like, I mean, because it was such a. Because anything, I mean, because like for me, it's like when you and then the part that pissed me off was which everybody loved. I'm like, fucking hell, a Skywalker.
Yeah.
It's like
Again,
Star
with
Wars.
those Skywalkers?
Star Wars is at its best when there's no Skywalkers.
Yeah.
Like Star Wars Rebels is incredible.
Yep.
No Skywalkers. Mandalorian incredible. No Skywalkers. I mean, Clone Wars has the Skywalker dad, but whatever. But dope. But the stuff with the Skywalker, it's like we need to leave that. That's that Joseph Campbell bullshit still stuck in the DNA of Star Wars that you have to unravel from that because it's no longer served its purpose.
Can we also give Jon Favreau his roses? Like, holy shit, man. I mean, I want to say 2014, that's when he did Chef, right?
Yeah.
And there's the shift in his work and in his just aesthetic and in his vision. And for a long time, I was like, man, I can't stand this dude. Now, hey, give me whatever he sounds like.
I mean,
Give me
Chef
whatever
was
he
dope.
sound like.
His Jungle Book, besides the. First of all, Kipling's just racist anyway, so we have to just own that. But
Right, you
there
can't.
there were some shots in Jungle Book that were phenomenal, though.
Mm-hmm.
There were some shot choices where I was like, "Whoa!"
I mean, I think Favreau he should get a lot of credit for just revolutionizing the way you film anything. And to Dominic's point about how like filmmaking is different in a post-COVID world, like the way they shoot The Mandalorian is going to be how you do big budget sci-fi movies.
Yeah, it actually anticipated the pandemic difficulties.
Yeah.
The most important characters are wearing a mask, and they're all in an isolated area with a
giant screen.
artificially generated backdrop, and they pull it off really well. I'm saying some movies you can see, or some things that are being shot recently, you can tell they aren't pulling it off that well.
Right.
Their shot selection is compromised by like how they, what people they can have together and how much shit they can get away with. But The Mandalorian executes it particularly well.
Yeah. But we probably have to give our props to Robert Rodriguez, though, because of Sin City. I mean, like, Sin City was
there
the
you
one
go.
that kind of done the a la carte filming before it happened now. I mean, I think that we need to give Robert Rodriguez his props for that back in the day.
Full on, yeah. He fully anticipated that.
Robert Rodriguez shot the best episode of the season with the.
And you
Return
knew
of
it was
Boba
Robert
Fett.
Rodriguez because there were so many shots from El Mariachi in The
Ming-Na
Mandalorian
Wen with
that
the-
was
with
so
the gun.
dope. Oh, and the cross hand shooting. I mean, it was just, I was like, yeah, I didn't even know who directed it until afterwards. I was like, this is Robert Rodriguez for real. Looked at it and I was like, yep, he has such a powerful signature.
But to Jamal's point, I was going to say, like, I think if anything, Disney needs to make Jon Favreau like president emeritus of the company, just for the fact that if not for Jon Favreau, the resuscitation of the Star Wars franchise would not have happened. And the creation of the freaking MCU would not have happened without Jon Favreau.
Yeah.
So that dude...
Really?
I don't
Really?
know. I don't know that, Keith, but I will say, I mean, he gets a lot. He has a lot of the skills that J.J. Abrams gets credited for. Which, I mean, he actually has those skills. He sort of grabs the nostalgic pop culture thing and
But also does
gives you a
something
way
new.
to get like.
But he can
gives you a
also
way
do
to, like,
something
get,
new.
get
because he doesn't stay in the nostalgia. He's not
Right.
beholden to the past. It's like, okay, this would work. This was dope, but let's put this twist on it. Let's actually change this a little bit. Let's do it. I mean, like I said, with Abrams, it's kind of like, you know, an Abrams film when you see it. Like, you see it. If every film feels the same.
It's stuck in the nostalgia too.
It's stuck.
Like,
It's stuck.
It's not the adapting it to the now, or that's the lens, but rather we're here. Let's sit in
It's the Ready Player One problem. It's like, remember this? Remember that? Remember this?
But
remember
the
that?
thing is,
remember this?
but-
That's pretty much...
that was
Yeah.
oh god, that's a horrible book. And
No,
movie.
but that's what I'm. But that's the whole
Yeah.
thing about Ready Player One. Is it like
It is.
It doesn't
It's
say
nostalgia.
anything. It's just like, hey, you remember that? That was cool. That's
The thing
like-
about Abrams though, it's like his TV was so dope. Like, I came to Alias late. That was dope. I watched like all of it in like a month. Like I was just like, this is incredible. Like, I mean, like the stuff, like his ideas are so dope. Like the stuff that he does, like the stuff he conceptualizes, you know,
for the small screen.
Well, that's
for the
right?
small screen.
But I wonder
It's
how
just
much of it
super
is.
dope.
But I think what Abrams is good at is like setting it up, right? Because like all the things you're mentioning, Alias, Felicity, Lost, like they had great setups. They didn't have great endings, and also Abrams wasn't necessarily responsible for the rest of it. You know, he's like
Right.
he did the pilot. He's like I said, he set it up. Like let's just like Episode 7 was a great pilot for a Star Wars sequel. You know,
The funny part is he did my favorite Mission Impossible. Mission Impossible 3 is my favorite Mission Impossible film, and nobody else likes it. But for me, I think the fights were better choreographed. It looked the fights looked more realistic. They looked more brutal than the other ones. That
which
looked
one
more
has
like pop
Superman's
culture.
gun arms? That's the one I like the most.
Oh, is that Ghost
love
Protocol?
this one. Love it. Love
But
it.
That's not Ghost Protocol, is
I
it?
don't know
believe
which
they
one it is.
stopped numbering after 3. And
Just
they
know
just
Henry Cavill had the
bunch
gun
of
arms.
Or they still numbered it and threw some name after. Like you were supposed to remember the name and the number. There's too much
Fallout,
going
was
on
it
here.
Fallout?
Yeah, it's too much.
Yes. Fallout. There you go.
Fallout. Yeah, not Ghost
Oh
Protocol.
boy.
I mean, those are actually pretty good movies, but that, for me, it was that 3, it was like, oh wow, you had the home life. We got some actual character building. It wasn't just running, action, running. It was like, oh, there's some character building in here.
Mhm.
There's, we know who Ethan Hunt actually is. I mean, for me, that's my favorite of the Mission Impossible films.
Yeah,
There's maybe to Keith's point where he needs a good partner,
like a David Lindelof.
In the world of volleyball, he's just just gonna be the setter. JJ's just gonna set it. Just can someone else spike this shit?
Yeah.
Someone like for real just come out of nowhere.
Well, that's probably the biggest mistake of having I mean, you know, Dominic, you and I talked about this on the podcast. Like having J.J. Abrams do your finale is, I think, where you've misstepped, because he's never good at, like, he's good at the reason his whole mystery box.
Yeah,
is a thing.
he teases a lot of things that he
doesn't have to worry
quite
about.
bring to fruition. Yeah, he doesn't have to worry about, because he's good at the trailer.
I would love for him to create a role-playing game, because
Along
he is
those lines,
such
yes.
a great world builder. Like the environments he builds are fun. Like the mythology of Lost is incredible.
Yeah, you'd rather play it interactively than watch the shit.
Yeah,
Absolutely. No,
but
I mean,
you know
for
what?
real.
The thing about Lost, it takes us back to the first thing we talked about. I kind of blame Lost for QAnon in a way, because I feel like that kind of internet sleuthing, the whole message boards dedicated to like deciphering every single thing on the screen, is kind of like led us to like 4chan.
It permeated. It spread. It just went from a damn show to like you're talking about these other message
Right,
boards
like
and
it's just
shit.
like everything's a decoded message. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
because I remember back in the day, I used to be on those message boards, like reading, oh yeah, that these numbers mean that and all this stuff, and it's like that kind of like conspiracy theorizing It's like, conspiracy theorizing for kids kind of thing, and it just kind of mutated into.
I mean,
into
I didn't even go back. I didn't even go back to the Jejune Institute, the whole immersive game that people were doing back in San Francisco back in the day. I mean, there's this whole thing about I am the author of my story, right? That I am the author of this story. There's something that's powerful about that. I think that's what's so dangerous about. So, a lot of people, would try to come after me like, you're always talking about narratives, and I'm like, yeah, because they matter. Like how I tell a story, who I tell the story to, and their response to the story matters. And if you read your Lippmann and your Bernays, you're going to see why this stuff is powerful. And I think that's why I think that fandom is probably one of the most powerful social change tools there is. But it depends on which way you're changing, right? Because you look at how TikTokers and K-pop fans got back. Those types of things. Like if you can organize a fandom towards a particular direction, you can. It's like a lever in a mountain. You can actually move it, but you just have to make sure that the right stories are sticking.
But that's the thing, right?
People.
Like, and this is your whole thesis. Like, the Trump presidency was a fandom presidency, right? Like, he even
absolutely.
He doesn't.
I wrote about it. I mean, I have a whole white paper about that.
He doesn't even call them voters. He calls them my fans. Like, they're Trump fans. They're not Trump supporters, right? And like the QAnon thing is literally like the lost message boards, but for the Trump presidency, and this whole kind of, activating this adulation.
The sleeping giant.
Yeah.
A bunch of fan narratives all thrown together, the Matrix thing, and then there's just, the fandom of awful reality shows, which, trained us all to believe that like the obnoxious guy was the hero and the reason we wanted to like. I mean, yes, I agree with all that. I think central in there somewhere is like reality shows have a fucking lot to answer for, because they basically
a lot of it does.
Yeah, that dickhead is the hero.
Yeah.
We believe that dickhead is the hero now.
Yeah.
I mean, shoot, we had every dickhead in modern Western mythology is the hero. We don't have many cool people.
Speaking of dickheads are the hero, like, I will say this, Dominic, as someone who's advocated for Asian American representation my entire career, I kind of want to take it back now that we've permeated douchebag reality TV with House of Ho and Bling Dynasty. Have you seen these like Crazy Rich Asians on steroids? Have you seen these?
Yeah, can we just say that Crazy Rich Asians is not our brand?
Like,
it is not the Asian thing that works.
Yeah,
it may
Asian
seem
representation
such,
was a mistake. I think that's where I've landed.
It sucks because it doesn't have a chance to like I don't want to say dilute, but it doesn't have a chance to enter the conversation and begin to naturally morph into something else instead of always being Crazy Rich Asians, right. which is unfortunate because we just don't have enough of it. It's this weird paradox. If we put it in, we'll be stuck as the thing. It's immediately pigeonholed as this thing. But if we put too much of it, is it? People get annoyed by it. I don't know. Yeah. It's really weird. But like you were saying,
you got Shaw's of Sunset. I mean, you had this whole, that was the beginning of Bravo, that. Of the Bravo. Hey, let's make people of color as dumb as white people. and black. And I just don't want black people to ever do TV ever again after all the Real Housewives and Black Inks. And as a tattoo enthusiast, I'm like, can y'all stop fighting and tattoo? Like, there's so much. Because the reality, it's just so crazy to me how much people of color and black pathology is so appetizing for people. Like, there's just something that people like this, they just love to see the fights, and they love that, you have worldstar.com, like that is a thing.
But from a safe distance, that's how like gentrification works, right? You're from a safe distance from behind the glass. Yeah, I get to watch this and I get to sort of flirt with danger, but at the end of the day, that's not a part of my world. So, it's that super old, like, oh, everybody wants to be black, but you don't want to be black.
Right. It's like why white kids listen to gangster rap? Because I'm in Iowa, Easy-E, but I would never in my life, I don't even know where Compton is, but I'm in Des Moines. Like, run your shit, homie. Like, come on, man. Calm down.
Yeah, no.
Before we wrap up, I did want to dive into like the one piece of new content that we did get, and we spent most of this conversation talking about the lack of Marvel Comics properties on TV or movies for the last year, and for the last 2 weeks we've gotten WandaVision, which is the first MCU thing that since Spider-Man: Homecoming or Spider-Man: Far From Home, there hasn't been any MCU products since, and the first thing we get are 3 pretty weird TV episodes on Disney Plus. I think the opinion of WandaVision varies on this podcast from really likes it to really hates it. So I want to know around the horn, what is everyone's opinion on the first 3 episodes of WandaVision?
I'm just an outlier super quick. I have not seen it yet because I'm still trying to catch up on Mandalorian. Okay. And then I kind of want to just binge watch everything when it's available. I'm a huge, I'm impatient. I want all of it now. You know what I mean? So
we'll try not to spoil. I'll respect you for not spoiling Tenet for me. We won't spoil WandaVision. You do know the premise at least, right? Like it's kind of,
yes.
I'm sure you've spent some time on the internet and kind of get the fact that it's about Vision and Wanda kind of trapped in a...
And seen a spoiler or two, unfortunately, because you can't escape it. Just people are going to do that.
So, Dominic, have you caught up on WandaVision?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it gets interesting at the end. I think that WandaVision has a similar problem to Wonder Woman 84 in that it's trying to do the time period kind of like a Snapchat filter, basically just like, here's what, oh, how funny the clothes were and the furniture looks different. But somehow they haven't yet engaged what makes the shows those periods really joyful or really creepy. I mean, they were simultaneously like the old sitcoms that said, David Lynch lives that world, like the old, and
the level of being sinister.
The sinister
like those suburban sitcoms are creepy, but they were also funny for a reason, for their time. The acting was a little bit more broad. They sold the jokes in a different way. Somehow they haven't done that. They just have all the dressing. So what you're left with is a bunch of people like performing. This is the act of performing a joke from the 50s on TV, except there isn't actually the joke. So, and that's actually a really obnoxious thing to watch on TV. It's like, hey, I'm doing the act of someone being funny in a certain time period. Don't you want to see that again? Really, the creepiest thing is the laugh track, and that I think that's the most effective and yet aggravating part of the whole show so far.
Sean, I know that you tried to give it the 3-episode try, and you tapped
out.
Oh,
I'm done. I'm not finishing it. I'm done.
Oh,
wow. And the funny part is people always think I'm the naysayer. I'm like, I'm actually a really easy sell. But I'm actually a super easy sell, because when we talk about what's nerd poppin', mine's a super easy sell. But it's like, it reminds me of this of Star Trek Voyager, where Voyager was supposed to be the weird one, but it just became Tropes Are Us. Like, WandaVision is supposed to be really weird, but it's not weird. It's odd, and there's a difference. You know what I'm saying? And so I was rooting for it because Tom King's Vision book is one of my favorite comics of all time. Sure. I love Vision. I love Scarlet Witch. I'm like, this is dope. I'm rooting for this. But then it's like, what is it? 8 to 10 episodes it's going to be? I'm not sure. 8.
I think it's 8.
8. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, 6, but whatever. Okay, but like we're already a third of the way through, or half of the way through, depending on how many episodes they have, and it's like, what? I mean, I get it. Like it's beautiful. Like, it's absolutely gorgeous show, but it's like, okay, so what are you doing with it? If you really want to be weird and creepy, you have so much beautiful source material you could have drawn from and injected into the story a little bit. But like I said, I mean, I may watch one more because my wife actually, she's kind of like, what the hell's going to happen next? Like, she's kind of into it a little bit. So I may have to watch it with her. But I'm just like, I'm at the point now where I have The Expanse. I'd rather, and I'm writing a book, so I'd rather spend some time doing that. I don't want to, like, keep giving a show.
Well, sure. Like, if you'd rather, I think that's all of us. Like, I'd rather be productive than watch TV.
Yeah. I mean, but there's certain things I love. Like, I was, after hating the first season of Discovery, season 3 was incredible.
That's right. So I was sticking to that. I still have to. I haven't come around on Discovery yet. I'm still haven't gotten past the pilot. So it's like every Star Trek show sucks until the 3rd season. 2 seasons. First 2 seasons of every Star Trek.
And I'm a Trekkie and I'm a Trekker. But yeah, so
it's really their fault, our whole binge watching
pretty much
tendencies now. Like, now we're all like, oh, we got to get to 3 episodes in and then it'll be good.
Yeah. I'm just hoping that WandaVision actually, I keep reading all these things, like, it'll get better, you'll see how it all ties in the end, but as an audience member, that's not the agreement we made. Yeah. The agreement we made was from episode 1, have, like, Mandalorian, episode 1, I was all in. Like,
Yeah,
all right,
so
I'm
what you're
watching
saying
this.
is they just needed a cute baby at the end of episode 1. And
No, that's like my least favorite part of the Mandalorian.
They
Actually,
have cute shit.
Baby Yoda is my actually least favorite part of the Mandalorian. But they have cute.
They're not
stuff,
telling
but,
a
yeah.
little. They're just not telling a narrative in every episode, or they're telling this very like a mock-up of a sitcom plot. But just to take the Mandalorian, every episode basically is a self-contained story that gets to a place, and it's very cynical of Marvel to be doing these like this long tease thing for 3 full episodes as an exercise in style.
But which they didn't
know-
do with Daredevil, which they didn't do with Luke Cage, which they didn't do with Jessica. We don't want to talk about the Iron that won't be named. We won't mention that at all.
That one was shitty, but those 3 were good.
But those 3 were, I mean, but they from episode 1, you're like, whoa, wait a minute, like they did something that made you to own it, and maybe those were because those are more grounded in reality. A mutant witch and an android having a relationship.
Sure.
That alone should be some weird shit. Like that should be some weird, but it's odd, not weird.
That's what all the jokes should be about. They should be hilarious, sort of creepy jokes about
like Jetsons jokes. So there's jokes in the Jetsons where you're like, wait, is he checking out Irona? Like what's happening?
They don't make one joke about how she's pregnant between a robot and a mutant. Yeah.
So Jamal, you've heard one end of the spectrum. I really like WandaVision, and I think I like it for all the reasons Dominic and Sean hate it. I love the tropes. I love that they're totally like they're all in on the laugh track and the cheesy 50s special effects, and that they don't hint at a larger story through the first 3 episodes. I mean, there are kind of like each episode there's more, and a lot of people after the first 2 were like, what? They weren't expecting like that Marvel was going to go all in on the black and white comedy trope. But I like the fact that for 3 episodes they're just all in on the like, we're going to do a 50s Dick Van Dyke show for the first episode. We're going to do Dream Magini Bewitched for episode 2, and we're going to go straight up Brady Bunch for episode 3, and then episode 4 I think is like Family Ties. Like I dig that, because I think the main reason I'm so into it is that my biggest problem with the Marvel Cinematic Universe is how anodyne it all is. It's all like the same, right? Like they all look the same. They're all the same kind of like gray cinematography,
No, I mean it's a great deviation from their general style. That much is inarguable.
Yeah, I just love that they go all in and they don't even hint at a larger story for 3 episodes, right? Like I'm all in. I dig that. I'm like, yes. I love the fact that people are tuning in going like, what the fuck? What is this? And that makes me happy. Like, that they completely bought into the whole 50s trope of the first episode, the 60s trope of the second episode. It's like, we're going to be the Dick Van Dyke show, laugh track and all. And to Sean's point earlier, I do think it's kind of Lynchian. Like, there is like a kind of like subtle dread throughout. And it becomes like, there's a scene at the end of the first episode. I think that's what hooked me, is the dinner scene in the first episode. And there's this kind of creepy Lynchian like dread that happens during this dinner that they're having. Because it's like it's a pretty typical sitcom trope where it's like there's misunderstandings and
the comedy of errors.
The comedy of errors, like the Dick Van Dyke show. But then there's this kind of like creepy vibe that kind of kicks in at the end. And that's where I was sold. I was like, I'm all in.
See, for me, it didn't feel like they earned it. Like so for me, it's like earn your creep.
But that's an MCU problem, because I feel like the other reason I like it is that to what we were saying about like we kind of have a relationship with all these actors in these roles. That's not necessarily true with Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany. Like I read somewhere that through all 23 movies, there's been like 20 minutes of screen time for the both of them. Mm-hmm. So just the first episode alone, you have more screen time with Wanda and Vision than the entirety of the MCU.
True.
And that's kind of like, I think you're right. Like it doesn't feel earned because it's like, it's the Batman versus Superman problem. It's like, we don't know these people. Why should we give a shit about them? And you kind of have to bring in your prior knowledge of like the comics and like the Tom King run, which they which I think they allude to. They allude to Vision in the comics, and I think that helps maybe. And like, and if you have like knowledge of like the Nick at Night stuff, right? Like you kind of see that too. So I say give it a shot. I think WandaVision is like Marvel finally flexing its like weird muscle. Like because again, my biggest problem with Marvel, the cinematic universe, is that to me, and I've said this on this podcast many times, it feels like TV. Like all of the movies kind of like feel like the next chapter in an ongoing story, and it's kind of shot like a TV show. Like as cool as the Civil War airport battle is, like, you know, it looks like a CW superhero battle.
Yeah, that was a super low stakes battle. That was low stakes. Like, all 8 of us, let's go.
It's like when Flash and Arrow are fighting in a parking lot.
Yep.
It's kind of like, you know, you got Captain America and Iron Man with like $1 billion budget. You could probably find something other than a parking lot to fight on. A parking lot in Atlanta. But so yeah,
empty.
So I kind of like the fact that their actual TV show, because say what you will about Daredevil and the Netflix shows, those technically aren't Marvel Studios, right? Like those were still that kind of like segregated section of Marvel.
Yeah. Except we heard Charlie Cox filming some parts of the new Spider-Man. Hopefully that's true, because he is probably my third, probably like most fully realized comic character. I'm like, oh, I really like this. Is like the comic. Yeah, for him. Yeah. I think he's wonderful as Matt Murdock and Daredevil.
Well, and I think this, you know, to tie the bow, I think one of the things that is exciting about where Marvel is headed in their cinematic universe, and I think WandaVision will play into this, is that they are kind of embracing the multiverse, right? WandaVision is going to tie directly into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, right? And
let's hope that's good.
Well, and Sam Raimi's directing it, so it could be.
Oh, so yeah, Sam, yeah.
So, but that also might solve some problems we're talking about with like Black Panther. Like maybe you can't recast T'Challa, but maybe you can pull T'Challa from another universe. You know, if they are really going to dive into this whole multiverse.
Andrew and Toby are going to show up, and it will be the greatest moment of my life. And then it's going to be it. That's really it. I do not care. I mean, they could nosedive the entire MCU, but for 10 seconds, if Tom and Andrew and Toby, if Toby is in the MCU, I mean, you got to understand, the 11-year-old me will go buck wild. So they can do whatever they want. So if Marvel messes it up, know that they were listening to me.
Yeah.
Maybe he's the guy who brings it all together, like Franklin Richards. It's like some like cosmic like focal point.
You know, with the supernatural aspect, even though she's a mutant, but there's still a supernatural aspect of Wanda. I'm hoping some hint towards Blade. I don't care how you do it, because Mahershala as Blade is probably the dopest casting ever.
Gosh.
Even though I'm not writing it, there's a problem that I'm not writing it. But I have a whole Bible of Blade that I've written, because if it wasn't for the first Blade, there'd be no MCU, or it wouldn't have come out as quickly as it did.
Or there wouldn't be the whole modern comic book movie juggernaut.
At all.
That started in 98.
People forget, like that movie, if you watch it today, it holds up today. 2, probably not as much, because Guillermo del Toro, his body horror stuff can get a little bit too much. Mm-hmm. You know, but it's still a dope movie. But the first Blade movie, you can't fool that
it's
movie.
Still class.
It's an incredible.
It's still class.
It's still, what is that, 20 what years now?
98. 20.
God.
23.
23 now.
No.
Yeah.
Is it 23?
98? Oh.
98. Yeah, 98. So, fellas, we always end the episode where we go around the horn and we share what's nerd popping for us this week. It's basically the thing in pop culture that we love the most, and we want other people to love as well. So we'll start with Sean. What's nerd popping for you?
I have 2 things. One is the Archaea release of the graphic novel for Slaughterhouse-5, the Kurt Vonnegut novel. It's not my favorite Vonnegut novel, but it is probably the most beautiful graphic novel I've seen. And I just reviewed the John Jennings, David Brahms adaptation of Nnedi Okorafor's short story, and they turned it into After the Rain. And that's a beautiful book. But the way this book is designed, from storyboards to regular comic books, and it's the most beautiful book. And it actually improves on the novel, which is really rare. And my second What's Nerds Poppin' is Lupin, which is probably the most joyful show I've seen. It's too few episodes on Netflix. Oh, shit, one more. Idris Elba's In the Long Run on Stars. It's basically a loose translation of his life in the 80s in a council estate in England. And it is probably the most joyful, incredible Black diaspora multicultural show I've ever seen. And episode 3 of season 3 drops now today. I'm about to go watch it after I get off with this. So those are my 3.
All right. Dominic, what's nerd popping?
What's nerd popping? I've been watching the Doctor Who recently, and I know nothing about Doctor Who, so I've just been watching the Jodie Whittaker episodes, seasons, because I find her kind of enchanting. And, the cool thing about this is, in this case, I get to be the new fan who is like, I don't know shit about this. I just like this Doctor Who's a woman. I don't know about y'all canon heads who, know things about the 6 Doctors that came before. This is just the one that I happened to be on while I was alive watching it. So, without claiming I know anything about Doctor Who, I've been watching the most recent Doctor Who.
Jamal, what is Nerd Poppin'?
So this is I'm super hopeful and very, concerned, but also excited. This video game studio Vicarious Visions that worked on the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 remake, they are now going to focus exclusively on Blizzard games. And a part of me is like, what the hell does that mean? But I'm also just like, it would be so crazy if there's a skateboarding game in the world of a Blizzard design game. But I'm curious where they're going to go, because a lot of folks were hoping that they'd remake more Tony Hawk games because they knocked 1 and 2 out of the park. But now it's like, hold on, they're going to focus only on Blizzard. So does that mean we're not going to get any more? I don't know. I'm also concerned that might put a stop to any future, remakes for Tony Hawk. But I'm excited. I'm looking forward to whatever news, whatever rumors are going to drop about Vicarious Visions merging into Blizzard.
Do you think a great Blizzard-y skateboarding game could be as much fun as web swinging around in the Spider-Man game? Like analogous amount of movement
I know
fun?
It would probably be super strange, and I think that strangeness would bring people in, as opposed to oh, this shit will be so smooth. It's more like, this is really strange. Let me see what it's about.
Yeah. Am I kick flipping over a dragon? The hell just happened?
Did my dragon just kick flip?
I'm here for it. Exactly. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. What about you, Keith?
Yeah, for me, so a couple of things. One, this show is came out 3 years ago, and I hadn't heard of it, and I recently discovered it on Amazon Prime. It's a show called Forever, starring Fred Armisen and Maya Rudolph.
Oh, yeah.
And it was co-created by Alan Yang, who co-created Master of None with Aziz Ansari, and was a writer on The Good Place and Parks and Rec. He created it with Matt Hubbard, who was also a Parks and Rec writer and one of the writers on 30 Rock. It's basically, I don't want, the description is just about, it's kind of, talks about the monotony of marriage between Maya Rudolph and Fred Armisen, and that doesn't even get into the half of it. There's a huge spoiler at the end of the first episode where you realize, oh, this is a different show than what I thought. And then at the very end of the second episode, there's another huge spoiler where you're like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. And then the third episode kicks in, and you're like, holy shit, this is reinvents itself every episode, this show. But it was only one season. It's 9 episodes on...
Ironic, because it's called Forever.
Yeah. On Prime Video. On Prime Video, check it out. It's, like I said, it came out 3 years ago. They never did another season, so you can watch a complete story on Prime Video. The other thing was a trailer that just came out. It's for Godzilla vs. Kong, Dawn of Kaiju. Have you seen the trailer? I to be transparent, I haven't seen a Godzilla movie since the 2014 one, so I never saw King of Monsters. I never saw Kong Skull Island. I don't know that I need to. I don't know what...
So.
Kong Skull Island is dope. I'm sorry. Kong Skull Island is such a dope move. It's so fun.
But there's so many plot points that if I don't see it, I'll miss in Godzilla vs. Kong.
Right? No. I got super Thanos and Thor vibes when they were showing Godzilla shooting the beam and Kong's got the damn hammer.
He's got Mjolnir.
Yeah, he did. He had that.
Or
made.
the Stormbreaker looks more
right.
like
He had an old Stormbreaker. So I'm hyped for that.
He did. I'm all in. I'm because they've been hinting at it for so long, and when he took one mug to hit another mug, I was like, you just grab a dude to hit a dude with a dude. It's batshit.
Everyone's going to be taking a side and hoping and rooting in Team Godzilla, Team Kong. I'm just, this always happens. Some motherfuckers are going to pop up and they're going to fight that. They're going to team up. There's going to be that enemy, my enemy, right? I live for that.
Yeah.
I live for that. I really.
You're gonna see Dominic Toretto. Hey, we're all family. Stop fighting. Let's work together.
Wonder Woman shows up and Kong turns to Godzilla and says, "Is she with you? I thought she was with you."
Yeah, I mean, because technically, Godzilla and Kong have the same mother also, don't they? Weren't they both like born out of the nuclear bomb age.
Well,
Sort of
Kong
metaphorically.
predates-
Oh, Kong wasn't a
by a
nuclear
decade, I think.
mutant baby. Okay, but they could retcon it such, and then they could both, say Oppenheimer. And,
That trailer got me. I didn't even care at first, then I'm like, let me watch this trailer. I watched it like 3 times in a row. I'm like, I wanted to catch. I was like, this, because for me, like, there hasn't been much bat shit that we we used to have like Big Trouble Little China, Buckaroo Banzai, like your stuff that makes no, like, it's just like Looney Tunes. Despite their racial politics and all the
Sure,
talk about another time. But we haven't had bat shit. This is bat shit.
Yeah, it looks so dumb. Like, that's why I like it.
It
It
looks dumb.
So dumb. I'm ready for the team up.
It looks so dumb that I'm gonna like wrap myself up in some cellophane and go to the theater. I don't know, because I just it looks so dumb that I have to be a part of it.
Yeah. To Jamal's point, like in the beginning of the trailer, I thought like, oh wait, Kong's the good guy? Like they're going to make Kong the good guy and like Godzilla's the bad guy?
Which is an easy way to cast.
Well, no,
it,
but I was
by
gonna
the way,
say, but then I realized it's all
American
Kong Skull Island characters like rooting for Kong, and then they show like the Godzilla character, like Millie Bobby Brown shows up. It's like, no, Godzilla. Why is he? And it's like, oh, so Godzilla's the good guy for the Godzilla movie people. This is really interesting.
I wonder will they pull like a Bandersnatch, like a Choose Your Own Adventure, like push this button for Kong to win. Tap on this for Godzilla to win.
Call this 900 number and Robin dies.
Or the tricks Rabbit gets to eat a bowl. Like, or whatever. I'm just dating the hell out of myself just now.
Push this button and Mothra shows up, and then the team. Yeah.
Or a Jaeger comes out of the water. Like, whatever it is, but there's gotta be...
Pacific Rim.
Idris Elba, but John
Boyega shows up.
Love it, you just said Jaeger.
So yeah, it's Godzilla versus Kong. I'll probably watch it on HBO Max just because I'm not going to the movie theater.
I'm completely kidding. I'm not going to theater.
Like, I think that's why I'm excited. Because if it was just like a blockbuster movie thing, I'm like, oh, I won't go to a theater to see that. But at home, hell yeah, I'll tune it in.
And just on a side note, good for you, HBO Max, again, for giving content so people can watch in the safety of their own homes.
For being the best streaming service there is now.
Yeah,
their DC stuff. I mean, they have DC deep cuts.
Well, that's because DC Universe died.
Yeah. True.
I mean, there's all sorts of politics involved, but the point is, like, the act of withholding content so that people would have to put themselves in danger is the ultimate dick move part of this. And so just adapting to getting it out there, new format, which you're gonna make make off eventually.
Yeah, because I don't think I'm going back to the theater or buffets or much of anything ever again.
Right? Perhaps never.
Maybe never.
Yeah. I mean, Dominic, you were banging the drum for 6 months in 2020 when we were still podcasting about how Disney should release Mulan on Disney Plus. They ultimately did. They ultimately released
and it was just
Wonder
okay,
Woman
as
on
we
HBO
know,
Max.
but it was still
right. It was just okay.
It was an integrity move.
but I think this
is outside of whether the movies are actually good.
Right. But I think like what we said earlier, Christopher Nolan just needs to like understand that there's a global pandemic.
And you're not that dope, dude.
Well, it just sucked. It sucked the time that it happened because he was prepared to introduce us to this, to outdo himself, right? Tens across the board, like we were mentioning. But it was just unfortunate that it happened to him at that time. Not that it was unfortunate, but just bad timing.
But then even the move for 21, where they're like, Warner Brothers, like, we're releasing everything. And here's the thing that I think people were forgetting, like you saw like Denis Villeneuve like complaining and all the I get it, like directors want to see their films in theaters, but at the same time, like theaters are very dangerous right now. Like I'm not even before the pandemic when I was sitting in a theater and someone coughed behind me, I was freaking the fuck out.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, right. All day,
right? That's so strange, and to see that the numbers are climbing, but there's not that like everyone in unison, like general consensus is theaters are bad. Like what? No, I mean I understand the downward trajectory that's going on with theaters in general that's been going on for years, but I mean come on now, we're gonna reach 500,000 in what like in a few weeks, a few months.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. And the thing about the HBO announcement though is that they were saying we're releasing them on HBO Max and in theaters that are open. So like if you happen to live in a city where a theater is open, you can go.
You can go.
You can go brave. To be the way you want to go. You can go that way.
You can go brave the Bird Box and go to the theater. I'm not braving the Bird Box.
more power to you. I love film directors. I'm a cinephile, but I understand in a global pandemic, I would rather watch a movie at home than and
I can't front Dune. I'm like, I'm so excited, and I'm just like, damn, I wanted to see that in the theater so bad. But you know what? I have a big TV.
Totally different.
Exactly.
I think there's slightly a stronger argument there when the guy physically went to shoot in the desert. When you're seeing big pictures of a desert, and it's more a movie theater experience. You're looking at a portal of it, to like, in a classic film kind of way.
It's not like CGI overload or something.
Yeah, let's be real. When we're going to movie theaters these days, we're basically looking at a big drawing.
Right.
All movies are animated. They're either all animated or they're real people with some animation in it. You're looking at a real big drawing. So the whole arguments of like, it has to be in a movie theater, I think it was going against that way anyway.
Yeah.
However, I do say you do have a slightly stronger argument if you went to shoot in the actual desert and are giving people a portal to that. So yeah, I feel like
I mean, like I said, but my point is that like, it's not like HBO or Warner. This is the problem with HBO fucking Max is the name of the streaming service. It's not as if Warner Brothers is saying, you can only see it on HBO Max. Like, again, if your theater is open in your town, we'll put it in the theater. But number one, theater shouldn't be open in your town. And number two, even if it's open, 90% of people ain't showing up. So.
I'm surprised that people are acting like this is not unprecedented times. We're not talking about like a sort of a rift between this is not like some kind of in-house fighting or somebody's being, I mean, it's one thing if we're looking at like a Ray Fisher thing, right? So if you're looking at something like that, which is a totally different conversation, we're talking global, where everyone's going to be impacted. So still kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, we should actually. That's a good point. But we should dive into that next week about the whole Ray Fisher, Walter Hamada beef, because there's a lot of layers. There's a lot of layers to unpack.
And you know that,
Yeah, let's do that next week. That's a tease for next week's episode, fellas.
Ooh.
Thank you for coming back to Hard Knock Life. We'll try to do this on the regular. Since it's been so long, let's tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you on the internet. Dominic, where are you on the internet?
I'm Dominic Ma at Dama, DOMMAH, and I have nothing else to plug right now. Stay safe, everyone. It was great to see all you guys.
Sean Taylor, where do you live on the internet?
I am at Real Love Punk on Twitter, SeanTaylor.net, and my podcast, Surviving Creativity, doing surprisingly well on all pod platforms.
Yeah, it's actually a coup to get Sean on here since he's got his own successful podcast. It's nice to have you back on the mothership, though.
I'm back home, man. I'm back home.
It was a relatively nice coup.
Didn't have to storm the Capitol to get Sean back on the podcast. Jamal Michelle, thank you for joining us on Hard Knock Life. We'll hope to see you again on the pod. How can people find you and your work until then?
Most definitely, you can find my stuff at the Nerds of Color blog, first and foremost. Love writing for y'all. Twitter at XProsper, so it's XPROSPERE. Sometimes I forget. I'm like, how do I spell my own damn handle? I got to make it something simple. There are like 15 Jamal Michelles, and they're just bots. My God.
Are they like an army of Haitian bots?
Man, Haitian bots, Indian bots, bro, they got me covered.
Strong team.
And thanks again, y'all, for having me.
No, but what I want to give to the audience is that if you have not read Jamal's eulogy for Chadwick Boseman, I suggest you turn everything off and read that, because as somebody who's written extensively about Black Panther and its global impact, it touched me in a way that I didn't know I needed to grieve. And so if anybody out there, and also as a university professor, I've actually assigned that essay to my students this semester for them to read. So I just, because you knocked it out of the park, bro. I just want to give you your props. I'm glad we got to meet today.
I appreciate that, brother. I'm really excited to get to be on. If y'all will have me on, I'm for it. All for it.
Of course. We're gonna actually drop the link in the show notes.
I appreciate it.
You can find me on Twitter at @TheRealChild, _real_child. Follow the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color. Go to our YouTube channel that you can see even more of Jamal's work. He's holding it down with our exclusive interviews on youtube.com/thenerdsofcolor. Subscribe to the podcast on all of your podcast platforms. You can find them all at hardknockmedia.com. Email us, thenerdsofcolor@gmail.com. And until next time, stay safe, everyone.
Well, it's the NOC in full color, you see me? The Hard Knock Life, comics, movies, and TV, yeah. Pop culture with a different perspective. Watch it on your screen, hit play, so check this. This is the Hard Knock Life, but not the chicken kind, more like the people.